Stuntron-tachi transform! Yoshi, yarodomo! Untitled Chapter!
Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and while Japan didn't go through a combiner war, they did experience an inundation of Unite Warriors. The HobbyLink Japan garage doors blew open as the Unite Warriors Menasor 5-member box set flew over to Canada, and hey, that means I can film it. This review will focus a ton on comparing these guys to their Combiner Wars counterparts, so hit up the Combiner Wars Stuntron reviews I did if you want more specific coverage of the individual figure designs. Takara Tomy went full gift set crazy on Unite Warriors, with magnetic box flaps and enormous plastic trays, as well as huge instruction booklets that often include a cute piece of artwork. The Stuntron's paperwork apparently missed something, as there's an extra piece of paper basically saying, "We messed up these 4 steps!" Because you know, Combiner Wars toys are some of the most complicated ones on the market. That was a disconcerting level of sarcasm. Unite Warriors has, in general, taken a more cartoon-centric color layout approach, in contrast with the sometimes toy-oriented appearances of the Combiner Wars lineup. We'll begin with a look at all the vehicle modes and how they differ from their North American counterparts, and we'll begin that beginning with the big man machine himself, Motormaster. Quite honestly, this is the one figure that differs the most among all the Menasor 5. At a glance, it's clear that he's much darker in hue, using a near black and slightly oily brown metallic plastic for much of his truck mode's body. The bright silver accoutrements pop incredibly hard off of that color, making Motormaster a visual treat on his own. Painted hubcaps are aplenty, and there's even some purple window detailing on either side squeezed in wherever the plastic could take the factory paint. Side by side with Combiner Wars Motormaster, it's clear just how much darker the Unite Warriors version is. The two color layouts took very different turns at the first fork in the road. Unite Warriors is focused on the dark cab of the original Motormaster's alt mode, while Combiner Wars focused on the lighter trailer that actually made up most of his body in the G1 toy line. The approaches are so starkly different I feel they border on the apples and oranges of personal taste. Unite Warriors naturally takes some extra points with its hubcap and side window paint, but both color schemes are totally viable on their own. Dragstrip's Unite Warriors alt mode is intensely yellow. Like that is his color, and by damn it, he'll wear it loudly. It certainly looks fine, but upon side-by-side comparison with his Combiner Wars version, I've gotta say, it also looks a little plain. Combiner Wars Dragstrip took many extra liberties in its use of magenta, and in my opinion, ended up looking much more dynamic in car mode. This is where one begins to see the other end of the Unite Warriors take, in which cartoon centricity also at times leads to huge plain whacks of solid colors, though it does also provide the Unite Warriors version with a much warmer yellow hue. Both dragstrips have identical accessories, differing only in the color of the hand-foot gun's thumb hinge, which kinda reveals that this piece may share plastic with dragstrip's bot mode shoulders. Breakdown remains dead on with his combo of just the right bony white and dark blue, and still has the big patch of hood-borne red paint. I wonder how much of a triumph this will be over Combiner Wars Breakdown's car mode. Check it out. It's barely anything. Unite Warriors ditches the dumbass racing tampograph on the front window and moves the hood insignia. The big win for the premium box set is less about the more demure front window and additional door-mounted Decepticon symbols, and more about the fact that the rear end of the car actually has tail light paint applications. The big wait what for the premium box set is that to give Menasor more symmetricality, I guess, Breakdown has Dragstrip's hand-foot gun. This loses a piece of functionality, but it's a piece that was more so meant for the Sunstreaker retooling, so I don't know. Dead End is a bit of a winner and a bit of a loser in alt mode. He no longer suffers for his unpaintable plastic strip, as he's just solid maroon. But he's also solid maroon. No gold stripe, no extra detailing, just a maroon sports car. Hey, that's not terrible, but alongside the Combiner Wars version, oh man, he looks like he just straight up forgot his last paint app before leaving the factory. It's a double bummer because once you swing around to his vehicular backside, there are tail light paint apps, a classic example of the universe giving and taking away all at once. The accessories are totally identical, by the way, other than the pipe having a slightly lighter shade of gray plastic. Wild Rider was very briefly the draw of this set before his Combiner Wars release, but he still looks pretty cool here. The Unite Warriors version sadly still suffers from that strip of unpaintable plastic, though it opts to work with the top gray area of the alt mode, while the Combiner Wars version supported the lower red detailing. UW's Wild Rider also has a plain hood, lacking the cool metallic plate of his North American counterpart. But his windows are way brighter, pulling off a look that comes even closer to the G1 toy than the Combiner Wars version. And while their individual approaches to the red side detailing are clearly different enough to be up for buyer interpretation, there's no debate about the fact that Unite Warriors Wild Rider has much more paint in back, filling in both the rear window and tail lights. The accessories are a far less interesting conversation. I mean, look at them. What do we even say? We say get on with it and talk about the robot modes. Hey, I saw this already. This is shameless video padding. No, sir, no. I am fast forwarding to the robot mode section. Anyway, this has been Internet crap, I went too far. Hang on. Okay, here we go. Whoops, talked over that part. Let's kick off with Motormaster's Robot Mode. This is the big payoff of the figure, as his arms reveal a ton of silver paint to adopt the G1 cartoon's big silver man in dark overalls motif. He's got a few spots of purple detailing, but most of his paint budget was spent in slathering silver all over his arms. When comparing him to Combiner Wars Motormaster, it's abundantly clear that these two toys are out to accomplish very different things. Combiner Wars Motormaster is based much more on the G1 toy, right down to his head being inside of the box, while Unite Warriors Motormaster's head is the box. The Japanese version does have a marked advantage in his eyes being picked out in red, and did I mention all the silver paint? But at the end of the day, I feel both Masters of Motors stand alone atop two very separate hills. Oh, by the way, Unite Warriors Motormaster benefits from the design's updated hip ratchet running change, meaning his natural standing click aligns much better with the natural A stance demanded by his slanted foot sculpts. Unite Warrior's drag strip is yellow. His robot mode is extremely yellow. He apes the G1 cartoon's man in a yellow onesie motif to a fault, because, well, he's boring! Impressively and accurately boring! Putting him next to Combiner Wars drag strip is a total squash, as it makes clear just how much the Unite Warriors version sacrificed. I mean, I can understand some folks' taste being more into the yellow and silver head that negates the crazy bloody teardrop paintwork of the North American version, but that certainly ain't my taste. The wholesale erasure of magenta and painting over of the best part of the head sculpt results in a most forgettable standalone robot. Breaking down Unite Warriors Breakdown's bot mode is pretty hard to do when looking at it on its own because, well, it doesn't look all that fresh. It's Breakdown, resplendent in bone and blue. So let's hop over to the side-by-side and count down the differences. He gains some much-needed silver paint on his boxy calves, and totally welcome blue paint on his hands. His half-visible combiner peg is blue too, blending in much better. But then he switches his elbow joints to match their surroundings, which I guess is okay. And some of that top platform stuff around his neck has changed color too, which I guess is okay. However, it's part of a cartoony embonening that spreads to his crotch as well, robbing it of the Combiner Wars silver and blue that I feel look much more interesting. This is a guy who'd best be served using bits and pieces of both versions. Dead End gets really clever, coating the otherwise hidden insides of his shoulder plates in black paint to represent the shoulder tires he had in the G1 cartoon. He follows that up with an entirely gray chest, and to be honest, I prefer the more maroon look of the Combiner Wars version in that regard. I'm not sure which set of hips and legs I prefer, as the Combiner Wars one is more interesting, but there's a charm to the uniform darker gray of Unite Warriors. Once again, in a perfect world where I'm less lazy, I'd probably want to Frankenstein these two together into my personal top-tier Dead End. Wild Rider's a similar story as far as differences go. He's very G1 cartoon referential too, with red arms, a light gray shirt, and dark gray pants. Once again, there's some great use of red paint on the alt mode hidden patches to have a bit of color reveal in robot mode. But in this case, I really can't tell you which Wild Rider I prefer. I look at the Unite Warriors one as early days Wild Rider, and the Combiner Wars version as the far crazier Breakneck, with crimson madness spread all over his body. It's striking to me how much I like them both, and how much I feel they tell the small story of his copyright explanation profile editions on his Combiner Wars biography. Yep, Stuntron-tachi got tiresome. Anyway. Smacked together into the form of Menasor, the Unite Warriors Stuntrons bring all their strengths to the table. The main center mass is dark, shiny, and pocketed with bright pits of silver. The four limbs are big, eye-catching, simple blocks of mostly monosyllabic color. It makes for a striking combine mode, especially if you ditch the stock transformation to give Menasor a slightly smoother silhouette. Side by side, there's not a whole lot to say. Unite Warriors Menasor's darker center mass plays well with its limbs, while the brighter and colder center mass of Combiner Wars Menasor gets along better with its own limbs' take on color use. The main conversation is that of the chest. Combiner Wars Menasor has a fairly plain pectoral block which clearly expects to open up and receive a sixth member. Unite Warriors adorns it with an ever so slightly more eye-catching combo of purple detailing with a bright Decepticon insignia in the middle, obviously wishing to look its best while closed. Although you can open it up if you like. Look at all that unpainted plastic that Takara Tomy doesn't want you to concentrate on. Ooh, naughty. The big question I wanted to answer was whether or not Unite Warriors Menasor had higher production values, and overall, I think the set does. When the paint wants to get intense, it gets intense, but the G1 cartoon reverence of its use leads to moments where I was very surprised to find myself bored. I have trouble weighing this in as simply better than the Combiner Wars Stunticons because so many parts are so very different. Motormaster and Wild Rider are such divergent color layouts, I almost consider them separate pieces from their Combiner Wars counterparts. Dead End and Breakdown don't feel better so much as having parts that turned out better, and almost as many parts I'd prefer to replace with the North American ones. And then there's Dragstrip, who is so very painfully yellow. The set is certainly worth considering if you just want a Menasor and have had no luck with Combiner Wars distribution, and if either choice costs more or less the same between shipping or customs fees or your own location's monetary biases, this is probably the easier and simpler choice. But I would definitely not call it categorically superior, just higher budget. If you have the luxury, I think there's something to be said about taking both sets of Stunticons and Frankensteining them together into your own perfect Menasor team. Anyway, this has been internet personality Vangelus, and speaking as a man who once was a toddler who thought his evil combining stunt robots were the coolest thing ever, 2015 was a real kind year to my sensibilities. But will I ride the Unite Warrior train beyond this little test drive? Time will tell. What an overblownedly cryptic way to say, I don't know, man.